Oh, there's so many yummy vegetarian options out there. You could try like lentil soup, veggie burgers, tofu stir fry. The possibilities are endless. Hello and welcome. If you've ever opened up the Income Tax Act and just felt completely lost, you're definitely in the right place. In this explainer, we're not going to treat the act like some impossible maze. Instead, think of it as a territory, and we have the map. I'm going to show you exactly how to read that map, how to get a handle on its structure so you can find precisely what you're looking for. All right, let's dive in. So here's what's on the agenda. First up, we're going to find that map to the act itself. Then we'll take a tour of the main territories, income from employment, then business and property income, and we'll touch on the other key categories too. And we'll wrap things up with a really crucial tip, how to actually find those tax rate tables that seem to be hidden away. All right, so where do we even start with something this big? Well, the very first thing you need to get your head around is this. Yeah, the Income Tax Act is massive, absolutely. But it's not just a random jumble of rules. It's actually built on a very clear, very logical foundation. I mean, seriously, have you ever opened that book or that PDF and just felt your brain shut down? Trust me, you are not alone. It's a common feeling. But the secret isn't about memorizing the whole thing. No way. It's about learning to read its blueprint. And this right here is probably the most important tool you'll have in your toolkit. It's called the detailed table of sections. Now listen closely because this is super important. This is not a table of contents. It has 0 page numbers. Think of it like a structural map or an architectural blueprint. It shows you how every single rule, every section fits into the grand scheme of the entire act. You can actually see the whole hierarchy right here. The act is set up like a funnel, It's got these nested levels. It starts out really broad with parts, like Part 1, which is for all income tax. Then it gets a bit narrower with divisions, like Division B, which is all about how you compute income. Inside of that, you get subdivisions for specific types of income, like employment income. And finally, you land on the specific rules in the sections. See? It's a perfect funnel, going from the most general concepts down to the super specific details. Okay, so let's put this into practice and take a look at our first stop. We're going to jump into Division B and specifically Subdivision A. This is where you'll find all the rules for income from an office or employment. And look at the simple logic they use here for employment income. The calculation is basically a two-step dance. First, you add up all the inclusions that are listed in Section 6 and 7. We're talking things like employee benefits, maybe some stock options. Then, step 2, you subtract the allowable deductions you find in Section 8. Stuff like specific travel costs or legal fees tied to your job. That's it. It's a simple add and subtract system. Okay, let's move on to the next category and see how this pattern continues. We're now in Subdivision B, which covers income from a business or property. And right away, you're going to see a very, very similar pattern. And there it is, that same logic all over again, inclusions and deductions. For business income, you look at Section 12 to see what you need to include, things like interest you've earned. Then you flip over to Sections 18 and 20 to see what you can deduct, like interest expenses or bad debts. See? Once you recognize this recurring structure, navigating the act gets a whole lot easier. All right, to really get the full picture of how income is calculated under Division B, we need to quickly cover the next 3 subdivisions. These handle some other really important specific categories. So first you've got Subdivision C, which kicks off at Section 38. This is all about your capital gains and losses. Then there's Subdivision D, which is kind of a catch-all for other income sources that don't really fit anywhere else. And finally, Subdivision E, starting at Section 60, lists out other deductions you might be able to take. And this is where you'll find the famous one for RSSP contributions, your Registered Retirement Savings Plan. Okay, so this is all great. We know how to find the rules for calculating our income, but what about the actual tax rates? The percentages we need to apply to that income. Where in the world do we find those? This is a spot where a lot of people get tripped up. And this right here is probably the single most important distinction you need to burn into your brain. That detailed table of sections we talked about, our map, it is not a table of contents. I'll say it again, it's not a table of contents. It has no page numbers, it just won't tell you where to turn in the book. So let's put it side by side. It's pretty simple when you see it this way. You use the detailed table of sections, that's our map, to figure out where a rule fits into the act structure. But when you need to find reference materials like the tax rate tables, you need the real table of contents, which works just like any other book, organized by page number. So here's the practical step-by-step of how you actually do it. Grab your copy of the Act, physical or digital, doesn't matter, and go right to the very first few pages. You're looking for the page that's literally titled Table of Contents. Just scan down that list until you find an entry that says something like Tax Reference Tables, and then just go to that page number. Easy as that. And boom, that's what's going to take you right here, a nice clean table of the federal and provincial tax brackets. But, and please listen to this, it is so crucial, tax rates change every single year. The table you're seeing here is just an example to show you what it looks like. For any real work, you must make sure you are using the official, up-to-date rates for that specific tax year. Always double check. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? What should you remember from our little tour today? It's this. The Income Tax Act, yeah, it's complex, but it is not some impenetrable fortress. It's actually a highly organized, very logical system. And once you get the hang of its hierarchy and you know which map to use for which job, you can absolutely navigate it with confidence. Which, of course, brings us to the next big question, right? We've seen all these different pieces, subdivisions A through E, but in what order do you actually put them all together to calculate someone's income? Well, it turns out there's a very specific process for that, and it's called the ordering rule. And that is exactly what we are going to map out in our next explainer. I'll see you then.